of you who've not attended one of our Plan C webinars before, these Plan C webinars are a series of free sessions online that the Resource Alliance are hosting with various different speakers and content, the aim of which is just to bring us all together to talk about the challenges and just to get through COVID-19 together. So thank you so much for being part of that with us. If you want to find out more about what's coming up next in the next couple of weeks, just head over to our website or drop me an email, and I'd be happy to hear from you. Today's session is a brilliant one, I have to say. It's about virtual connection and collaboration, and as Kaz said, it'll be very interactive. They'll be taking you through lots of different techniques to help keep your organisation moving and keep everyone going during this very difficult time. So thank you so much to Kaz, to Fee, to Gavin and to Kyla for putting this all together and for giving up your time to talk to us today. Really appreciate it. And I'll hand back over to you. Hope you all enjoy it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruby. And yeah, just huge thanks to you and the whole Resource Alliance team around the world for putting this together and really supporting the community at this time. So yeah, tiny bit of housekeeping, everyone. Make sure you've got a pen and paper ready for some of the exercises we're about to do. As I said, change your name on Zoom if you would like. I also just want to super quickly run you through some Zoom language that I'll be talking about throughout the session. If you have a question throughout the session, feel free to use the Zoom feature, which lets you raise your hand. The reason why I say the Zoom feature to raise your hand is it pops your name to the top of the chat box so any of the co-hosts can see it. It's a really good feature to use with your teams if you've got sessions with more than a few people. The other ones I'll show is jazz hands. So Gavin always cracks the best dad jokes in the world. So when he does that, I always do jazz hands, which just means awesome, funny, whatever. And it just means that when we're all on mute, it's an easy way to interact and to show some kind of energy or some love to the person on the phone call. You can also do jazz hands down or jazz hands kind of sideways. So like, I'm not sure about that comment, or no, I'm not up with that. The other one, which is my absolute favorite, is wrap it up, which is from our beautiful European friends taught me this, which was, hey, you're talking too much. It's time to wrap it up. And you can do that in big group calls. And it's a really nice, polite way that if you're a facilitator and you see quite a few people doing this at the same time, it's much easier than people having to kind of interrupt you as they come through. The next thing I want to do is the land that I'm meeting here on today. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and I really want to do an acknowledgement of country. I think it's very, very important as we're meeting not just face to face, but also virtually. An acknowledgement of country in Australia is all about paying respects to the First Nations people here and really, really showing that we understand the connection that they have to land. So I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which I'm meeting today, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I want to recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge that it's pretty special that we've got so many people from around the world on this call, and I really want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which all of us are meeting from today as we run through this session. Quickly, to the co-facilitators on this call, do you want to just unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves to the group? Kyla, let's start with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, hello everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. And I'm sitting here in Norfolk, Virginia in the USA, although my backdrop is showing London. But I'm working with two companies right now, DSIL Global, a design and innovation company, and Philanthropy and Fundraising North America, along with some fundraising gurus, Adrian Sargent and Alan Clayton, who some of you may know from IFC and other places, but really happy to be here with everybody and can't wait for the session today. Over to Gavin.
Thanks, Kyla, nice one. I'm Gavin Kuby, I'm here in Sydney, and my speciality really is understanding what motivates supporters of charities, and by supporters I mean all people who want to take positive social action, so really in the public, amongst donors, supporters, volunteers, campaigners? What is it about them that makes them engage with what we do, and how they want those relationships to form, what they want from the relationship? And I use that to inform a lot of leadership discussions with organisations about getting more tightly focused around their marketing, and also with CAS a lot within innovation. So that's what I do.
Hi everyone, Fee McPhee. I'm down here in the South Island of New Zealand, so I'm the most awake of everyone probably at the moment. Look, I'm a fundraising coach and strategist, so I work with fundraisers and more recently, or in this kind of period, a lot more with boards and bosses around what do we do with our fundraising through this period. So I do coaching and I also support teams, so fundraising teams, facilitating teams through decision making with their fundraising. And that might be 1 or 2 people or full teams, and we're doing a lot more via video conferencing. I've been working remotely for about 15 years now, but it's been fascinating working with teams who've suddenly found themselves in the space of 4 days having to work remotely. So I've been helping people work through that more recently.
Great, thank you so much. And it's just such a joy to have such experienced people from all around the world and from really different contexts. I'm Kaz. I've just founded an organisation called Starling, and Starling is all about collaboration. So the reason why we're a very mixed up team around on this call is I'm all about bringing together diverse consultants and organisations to collaborate on impact and purpose-driven projects. So that will be across different organizations, across different companies, to really come together and make unbeatable teams, whether that's for learning and development programs or whether that's for consulting jobs or specific projects. And right now for us, we all knew that we had to come together and try and do what we could do to support the social impact sector at the moment. I also just want to acknowledge all of you. I know a few of you, some of you I don't, but I've seen the organizations you work for, and right now it's incredible. Everyone on this call has such deep knowledge and experience in what they do. And that's why we want to make it so interactive, to really amplify that contribution of everyone on the call right now. I also just want to take a minute to kind of acknowledge that we're meeting at a very chaotic time and a very difficult time. And then everyone on the call and everyone in our organizations and our countries are going through such different things right now, and such tough, challenging things. I've got a quote here from Bill, who said this just on the Plan C discussion the other night. And it really, really reached out to me. It said, there is no roadmap for this, for what we're going through right now. And it is purely a time to call upon our higher self. We have a choice as fundraisers, as change makers, but also as communities to be victims of the change around us, or agents of that change. And if you're interested in listening to that session, it was absolutely awesome. I've included the link there. We'll send everyone these slides. You'll not only have a deep dive into kind of leadership at this time, but you also understand why on earth Bill Tolliver would start with a machete and a cane, leadership presentation. But you can go into all those kind of symbols, and a really great talk about courage and commitment and what that needs right now. Our journey today is all about empathy. So it's like, how can we as leaders empathize for our people, our staff, to come together to collaborate? How can we get the insights that we need out of our donors, our supporters, and again, also our staff and communities, the public? How can we dive into fundraising and reframe the decisions we're making right now? And of course, leadership, which is cutting across all of these. The format of the session is that myself and Kyla will be taking us through these interactive exercises. And then following that, we're going to have a Q&A with all 4 of us, and also open up the floor to yourselves for any questions you have and any contributions that you want to make. Please feel free to put any questions that you've got in the chat box as they're coming up. All of the co-hosts will be able to answer those questions, so you can either direct them to someone specific, or just one of us will answer those questions as we go through. I also just wanted to, before we looped around, have 2 more quotes. The first one just is about how shared this is in the world right now. When in history has humanity had such a shared sense of purpose? And it really is everyone in the world right now in this space together. And the context of that for fundraisers, Fee, I'll hand over to you to give a bit of context, but I pulled this quote out after Fee and I have been having a few discussions around leadership and where does the fundraising sector and social impact go at this time. And Fee, like always, it was just a really, really important comments that you made. So over to you just to frame this.
Yeah, thanks, Kaz. And Kyla, you might have heard sentiment around this. This is very much an Al Clayton. I was talking to Al the other day, and it really resonated me. The idea here that we need to plan to see ourselves through, not just to survive. And I think the organisations that are thriving right now are the ones that are looking forward and past, as opposed to just focused on the immediate. For me, plan for the worst, hope for the best. That's something that my mum used to say, but I think it's really, really valid here at this time. And trying to find that time to actually plan for what can be on the other side. You can get really caught up in the kind of trauma and the drama of what's happening right now, but it will pass, and we need to be thinking about what's on the other side for us.
Yeah, completely. Thanks so much, Fee, for that. And also a very quick shout out. I think it's very important in these sessions to acknowledge our incredible teachers and all the people that go into sessions like this. So quick background, the organisation Kyla's working for at the moment, huge shout out to DSIL. A lot of these structures, DSIL have been practicing them in the social impact sphere for decades, and they do really, really incredible work in the design and innovation space. And the quote down there from the bottom from DSIL's founder and CEO, which some of you may have heard speak at IFC Asia or IFC the Netherlands. Katie was one of the keynote speakers there, but her quote has just been so meaningful these entire few weeks, which is together or not at all. And I think that is really our call to responsibility right now. Also a huge shout out to the creators of some of these collaboration structures. Keith and Henry are some of the most brilliantly intelligent, mad scientists I've ever met that have created these, and then some incredible facilitators all around the world. So Katie from DSAL, Anna and Fisher here are based in the States but work all over Europe, and Nancy White in the corner there, who also work in social impact and are really leading the way in this practice, and who Kyla and I know others have really learned from. Great, so getting right into it, we're going to be doing some collaboration now. For those of you who are on the phones, we are going to be putting you into breakout rooms. So if you are not able to be participating in the breakout rooms, if you can mention that in the chat box now. We've had some issues with breakout rooms on calls. So for those of you facilitating your teams, make sure that people are always dialing in on one device, or they've let you know that they're across two devices. So when you're putting people into breakout rooms, you can facilitate it kind of accurately. So we're going to generate some ideas for our context right now. We're then going to explore and understand those ideas more deeply, reflect alone, and then go into some more kind of structures. This is going to be playful and experimental, might be a little bit different from some of the other webinars that we've been on. It is not a webinar, and it really is about getting everyone on the call to contribute and interact. As I said, yes, we might be the facilitators, but you guys are all leaders in your own right and with incredible experiences around the world. And there's a bunch of reasons for collaboration, not just to do innovation pipelines or ideas. A lot of people see collaboration like this, a brainstorm where it's all storm and no brain, and it's a mess, and it really lacks that kind of structure and that insight. But really, I'm so passionate about making collaboration an incredible design. So first of all, to just ensure that you're getting your staff into that space of practice by doing or teaching others. This is a learning pyramid, and really shows that if you're at the top there as a leader, reading things out to your staff, lecturing them, or just going through PowerPoint presentations like I am now, but we'll soon change that, they're really not going to have that deeper learning, and they're also not going to pass that on to the people around them. Secondly, it's about building that team culture. It's about encouraging your staff to not only listen to what they have to do, but take that radical responsibility and tell you what role they want to play in this piece of change and culture. And it really does build innovation into the culture of your team and the DNA of it, not just into product development or certain kind of changes they go through. And secondly, for anyone that wants to geek out with me after this session or any time in the next few months, I would love to tell you about the neuroscience of all this stuff and why it works so well, but I won't go into it on our call now. Super quick note too, all of this relies on freedom and responsibility. It relies on you creating space for other people, listening deeply to them, and to also encouraging yourself to have courage to contribute in ways that you haven't before. So I really will encourage you all to contribute today as much as you can and be open and vulnerable and share with courage. Great. So alone, for the next minute, wherever you are in the world, I would like you to just have a think about the following question, which is the prompt that we're going to be reflecting on today. And that question is, what is a critical habit or mindset that you need to change to make this transition successful? Gavin's just put it in the chat box as well, if you need to have a look at it. What is a habit or mindset that you need to change to make this current transition successful? And for this exercise, I want you to step out of organization head and I want you to step into your own space. What do you need to do to make this change successful? I'll give you 1 minute to reflect on that. Now, whilst you've been thinking of that, I'm going to divide you into pairs, into breakout rooms. You'll have 1 minute each to share with your partner what just came up for you. Make sure you share that space evenly together and practice deep listening. If you haven't gone into breakout rooms before, what will happen is a pop-up box will come onto your screen and it will ask you to accept to join into that breakout room. So I'll put that on your screen right now and pop into those.
Sorry.
But hopefully you had a good opportunity there in the breakout room to have a chat around your critical habit or mindset you need to change. So the next prompt, what we're going to do now, and Kaz is sort of rushing around in the background to set us up into groups of 4 now. So in the groups of 4, the prompts is, what came up for you in that discussion? What are the words, the phrases, the ideas or questions that you're still holding from that? And sharing the conversation you had with the previous person. So as ever, the prompt is in the chat for now. And you'll probably have 4 minutes or so. So make sure you give everybody a chance to share their perspective within the group.
There's a few groups of 5 in this. So we'll give you guys about 5 to 6 minutes instead of 4. Don't worry about timing it. I'll give you timing reminders whilst you're in those breakout rooms when the little pop-up box comes up. So just look out for those little timing warnings. Awesome. So I'm going to bring everyone back now. And then Kyla, I'll hand over to you for the Mad Tea introduction. I'll lead in for you though.
All right, great.
Awesome. Great. And everyone's back in. So just a few quick tips for you if you're going to be using these exercises and facilitating your teams. As I said at the start of the session, make sure you're very aware of who's on the call and whether people are on video, phones, or different devices. When you do the breakout rooms, it's very important to have someone else who's facilitating with you. At first, when you're doing online facilitation, it feels like you might be able to just do it alone, but it's quite complicated sometimes in the back end of Zoom. So you would have noticed that Gav stepped in to facilitate that bit of the session whilst I was kind of madly trying to put everyone into breakout rooms. And if there's issues and errors with breakout rooms sometimes too, as a facilitating group, you might want to engage in discussion with anyone whose device is not working. So just then, you'll see it on the recording if you listen back, but we just had a discussion in the facilitators room, which is like the main room. And if people are joining the call and they come in, they're kind of a bit confused about what's going on, just engage in the discussion and make sure the prompts are all in the chat box room. So now that we've come up with a bunch of those amazing ideas and had those discussions together, I just want to open up to the group. So if you're willing to share what came up in your group, if you can just unmute yourself and share kind of what you discussed, that would be really amazing.
We were talking much about the same problem that we're all experiencing, sort of keeping that routine and motivation going when we're in the same place working, but also remembering that we're not alone in this and that everybody in the world is experiencing the same problems, and try not to feel too overwhelmed by it, but doing tiny little things like having lunch at the same time every day, just to keep that structure, because it's so easy to get distracted and lose focus on what it is that you're meant to be doing, and the day just drifts, and before you know it, it's midnight.
Totally.
I would just echo that it came up, someone in our group talked about being a workaholic. It's really easy for the day when we're sitting here working remotely. And on top of that, I have such an appreciation for my mother. I don't know how the hell she got 21 meals on a table every week, and did laundry and sanitized everything. But it's so easy to go into overdrive right now. So that came up. I think the other thing is we talked about being in a negative space, and it's very easy to get in this rut right now, especially those of us that are locked up, and there are quite a few of us, if not all of us, on the phone in the same position. I did 2 weeks in social isolation in Australia, and then of course had to do 2 weeks, just finished today, when I came back from Australia. So it's been a lot of time. And it's like we're feeling a sense of heaviness and negativity, and you have to get over it, and if you're going to push on. So it's a daily, I talk to myself several times a day now, and that came up from our group as well.
I'm sure we're all kind of talking to ourselves several times a day.
Constantly.
Constantly. Catalina, you had a raised hand. Did you want to contribute for the group?
Yes. Something that came up for me is a matter of balance, because we're learning how to work from home, and now everything is virtual. So there are 1,000 webinars going on, Zoom calls, and then it's so easy to just want to jump into everything and do everything and start from very early in the morning and don't know when to stop. Like, for example, I'm finding myself working in my computer until 10 p.m. because I have this feel that I need to get everything done. So it's about having a balance of and establishing a routine to ensure that we look after ourselves, we do our exercise, we have our productive time, we have our chill out time, like scheduling those little things that really gives us balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't echo that more. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing. If you are doing this in your teams, it's a really great time to let everyone to share what came up for their group. What you can do with much larger groups as well is you can say what kind of was the collective thing that brought it up for everyone. So yeah, what we want to do is take all those wonderful ideas and really go into deeper group reflection about what they mean to us. So I'm going to hand over to Kyla to facilitate an exercise called Mad Tea, or my newest kind of nickname for it is Chat Waterfall. Over to you, Kyla.
Yeah, thanks, Kaz. This is one of my favorite exercises to do in person, and I think that I enjoy it just as much actually virtually. So it's really fun the way the ideas populate and come together. So as Kaz was saying, what Mad Tea allows us to do is to, if we've been in something like breakout rooms, to come back together and to provide an opportunity for everybody to share their reflections and their thoughts at the same time. So even if in your virtual Zoom calls that you're doing, you have 100 people on them, you can do this just as quickly. So we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. And essentially, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask a question or a prompt. As soon as I've asked it, I think Gavin is the one that's going to put it into the chat box. And then everybody's going to have about 30 seconds to respond to that question. But I don't want you to hit enter immediately. I want you to hold, because we're all going to hit the enter button at the same time. And when we do that, we're going to see a whole as Kaz called it, chat waterfall of responses. So everybody's response is going to come in at the same time. All right, but so the questions we're going to ask are going to be what has come out of the conversation so far. So the first one for everybody is, a word or phrase coming up for me is. A word or phrase coming up for me is. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Everybody hit enter. Fantastic. All right. We're going to, I think, Kaz, we're going to jump into the next one, right? Because there'll be an opportunity to reflect in a minute. So the next one, the next sentence or thought that we're going to add here is, an idea that stood out to me the most was. All right, 3, 2, 1. Everybody hit enter. Fantastic. All right, next question. We've just got a couple more. The critical habit or mindset I want to focus on is. 2, 1. Everybody hit enter. Great. And now finally, the critical habit or mindset I want my team to focus on is. All right, just a few more seconds. And 3, 2, 1, everyone hit enter.
Isn't it just your favorite? It's my favorite thing, watching all the responses.
It is mine too. So now we're going to take just a few minutes for everybody to scroll through the responses, and then we're going to ask a couple of questions about what you see. But please just take some time to scroll through what everyone on the call has written here. So Kaz, shall we move on to the pattern piece of this? Yeah. All right. So we're going to do a couple more Mad T's here. And this is about what you've been reading and observing. So the first one is, a pattern I could see emerging is. A pattern I could see emerging is. And again, if you just type your message in the chat when you have it, and we'll hit enter all together. 3, 2, 1, everyone hit enter. Fantastic. People want to learn and feel more positive coming out of it. People are new to working from homes. There's a lot of great stuff in here about being positive, adaptation, etc. So then finally, just to round off this session, one final Mad Tea question. A question coming up for me is. A question coming up for me is. All right, everybody got their question? So let's hit enter now. So how can we use online tools? How can we bring everyone together and along? What's next? Great question. And how is this going to change us? So, I mean, you can see the application here when you're doing this in your teams. Gosh, even with your family and friends, you know, just ways to gather ideas and information. Kaz, did you want to talk about the next slide?
Yeah, so just on exactly what Kylie has said, I've just given some super quick examples. I'll let you read through them once Ruby and I share the slides, but Mad Tea or exercises like this really can be applied to so many different things. As a strategist or as a fundraiser, you still would do your job as you would. So you would ask those questions, you know, what does my team need right now? What am I trying to discover in the strategy? And then you would apply those questions to Mad Tea accordingly. The thing to note is when you're doing Mad Tea, it's all about gathering depth and insight. So as you'll see from the questions we just did, you kind of start quite generally, you know, word or phrase. Then you get people to prioritize. So like, what is the idea, the number one sticking out for you? Then you get them to look at their own personal responsibility. So, you know, what about that for me? Then looking at team responsibility, what about for others? And then kind of outside of that, the final bit is patterns. So what kind of systems, things are you noticing to change? And you can do that depth for anything as kind of casual as, hey, I want my team to share working from home tips. So you'll see on the screen on the left-hand side, you know, reflection of sport. What have you been reading? What are you watching? How can we deal with this together? To anything as more in-depth as kind of strategic team working environments. It also gives people, especially if you're doing anonymous chat boxes, to be much more honest about how they're feeling. A lot of leaders at the moment are saying, you know, when I'm behind a screen, we're losing that human connection and that vulnerability and that empathy. Using these tools online are a good way to get your team to honestly share and listen to each other. So this was one we did last week with a big engineering firm in Australia. And you can see there that previous to this, they hadn't really told management that they were struggling with anything. And you can see that a lot of the responses were really being honest about how they were feeling and drew that out in the chat box. Great. So we're going to do one very quick final exercise. What I will say here is that pace is very, very important when you're facilitating groups. So when you're going through these things, whether you're doing Mad Tea, the idea generation at the start, or a piece of reflection, you can go super fast through Mad Tea if you just want a bunch of super quick answers and you want people to say what's on the top of their mind, or you can go for slower, more in-depth reflection. So the instructions are, I want you all to grab that piece of paper and pencil or pen that you had, that A4 sheet coming out. And I want you to divide that piece of paper into 4 quadrants. So Gav's holding that up if you guys can see his screen at the moment. Now in the center of that piece of paper, I want you to go from the point of intersection of those 2 lines, and I want you to start to draw a very tight, slow spiral from the inside of that page to the outside, as slowly and tightly as you can, without the spiral touching itself. The reason why we do that is to just get everyone centered and grounded. When you're going into a space of personal reflection, you want everyone to kind of come out of that ideation space. In the first quadrant, whichever one you happen to choose, I want you to just note down a few key words or draw something that you're noticing about yourself. Now in the next box, I want you to think about the challenge or mindset from the last exercise that you want to personally change. So what was that habit or mindset that you had? Now I want you to jot down a challenge that you might have in trying to make that change. The third box, so a team or person I know is overcoming these challenges by ... And when you're getting yourself and your teams to think of this, the more specific you can be with that example, the better. And the final prompt, it's called 15% solutions. And what it is about is what action, no matter how small it is, can you do straight away to make that change? And it tries to get yourself and your teams away from just thinking about all these big strategy things and directly into action. So with that in mind, what's your 15% solution? Team or with yourself, or, you know, as Kyla said, you can do this with your family, you can do this in your relationship. Make sure you just write down whatever comes up for you. It's an emergent exercise. I'm gonna move into our Q&A part of this session. Kyla, Fee and Gav are some of the most experienced people I know and have also worked with diverse organisations all around the world. So I'm going to go over to them. If you have any questions that are coming up for you, please put them in the chat box as each of them is speaking, and we'll try and loop around to any questions from the group at the end of the session. So Fee, I want to start with you. You know, your background, you're at the moment you're working with a bunch of different organisations, both on fundraising, but as you said, also on leadership at the board and kind of management level. What are some of the challenges that those leaders are facing right now? And in your opinion, what's not working for leadership?
Yeah, it's a good one. A really big one for me at the moment is decision making, or actually people not making decisions. So that kind of decision paralysis, and some are taking a kind of wait and see approach, which for me is quite dangerous because this isn't a tap on, tap off situation. So not seeing the change that this is for people, their beneficiaries, their programs, their organisations. So the lack of decision making is a massive challenge at the moment, just kind of being in stasis. Also, the other big one is working out what to say to their audiences. Being silent isn't working, and everyone is affected in some way. And we know our supporters and stakeholders want to know what's happening with the causes or the issues that they care about. So there's this kind of not talking, not making decisions, really big challenges, crunchy challenges that are facing some organisations right now.
Definitely. And Kyla and Gav, do you have anything to add to that question?
Kyla?
Sorry, as I realised I muted. Yeah, just to add to that, Fee, I think it's also about just recognising that we are in a different time right now, and we really need to lean into our humanness.
Yeah.
So there's other factors that typically are not associated with the workplace, you know, like empathy and vulnerability, and those are things that leaders are really needing to lean into now so that they can truly support their teams, and give everybody an opportunity to just share what they're experiencing in an environment that's very open and safe.
Yeah.
So I think those are some really big leadership shifts that we're seeing happening.
One group I'm working with, the kind of mantra that the main person there is trying to push through is people first, revenue second. We need to look after our people. You know, if the revenue stick is the stick, the people are going to crumble at this point. So yeah, I think that empathy and leaning into our people is so critical right now.
And what's the irony of that reversal, Fee?
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, revenue comes after you look after your people. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. And a note on that, Kyla, too, like we've seen the reports come out of Australia, the UK and the US on kind of the impact of COVID-19 on fundraising. And it is an interesting one, that the issues and the concerns that leaders raised, neither of those reports in the top 5 got empathy or like worry about people in the top concerns and worries. It was income generation, it was, you know, big board decision making, and it wasn't that people and empathy piece. Gav, I'd love to go to you in kind of light of surveys and insights and everything. What do we know at the moment about the kind of public response to this? You know, what do we know about motivations of the public towards fundraising, and how might we respond to that in this context?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because our understanding of this is changing all the time. And initially, I think we thought, or we were told, that the public would become less generous, would be focusing on themselves and not really engaging in community and actions with others. But actually, we've seen probably the converse to be true about a significant group within society. And all of the research studies and all of our understanding of how people deal in a crisis, there's a couple of things that I think we need to engage with. People are desperately needing to connect at this moment in time. You're one of the organizations they connect with. So build that connection and engagement, and make them feel part of your valued community. That's very, very important to remind them of how important they are to you, and vice versa, to ask for their advice and help at building that relationship. Second thing that happens, I think, is that people are looking for things to do. They really want to take an action, and I, this is also what drives that. I don't know how many other countries have had this, the rush to the toilet roll in the supermarket, but basically that's actually a rational thing. People go, there's a terrible moment. They're saying toilet roll's going to run out. I'll get some toilet roll, because it makes them feel better. So they take an action. Now, they feel even better if that action is a positive thing and they can feel good about it. So we go back to saying there's this thing called lipstick factor, which in the Second World War, lipstick sales went through the roof because people wanted something simple and cheap that could make them feel better. Giving makes people feel better. So give them the opportunity to act in that framework, and they will take it. Make them feel special, give them connection and community, and in reality, you will be welding on your strongest supporters more strongly than ever before, and potentially engaging more of the public who want to do something positive. 750,000 people in the UK have volunteers for the NHS. And that's an amazing response. You're talking about 750,000 people saying, I want to volunteer. And those people are out there. It's finding ways to connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big time. I couldn't agree more. And kind of on the back of that, the leadership decisions coming through, how do we look after our staff? How do we look after our donors? Where do we go with this? Where do we start with that? And Fee or Kyla, I'll go to either of you on this question, but how does leadership know where to begin when they're making these kind of big decisions, and what's needed from them as leaders in this space?
I think Anne-Marie, your comment there about prioritising the well-being of your people, including your donors, for me, that is the place to start, and actually working with our people. So I've seen some are doing a really great job at supporting their teams to work in new ways. So not saying go home and work in exactly the same way you work in the office, because that doesn't work. And it really, in one way it stymies their kind of creativity and motivation as well. So actually using their teams to work out the best ways to tackle the problems, but putting those people first, so them and their donors and stakeholders, and being decisive. I think the other big thing for me there is accepting that plans may change, willingness to make a decision though. Live with that decision and move forward. And actually, agility is a really big one. A lot of our organisations, a lot of not-for-profits aren't structured to change their plans. Plans get set, and that kind of, there's a structural issue and a challenge there around actually, well, these plans need to change again and again and again to keep us moving forward. So some are doing really great at that.
Yeah, and I would also add that leaders need to start with listening. And just a really important skill, but truly listening to what their teams need, what their donors need. And I've been working with one large enterprise here that has about, 2,500 people. And there was, just as simple as a company-wide survey with 5 simple questions just to get a pulse on how people are thinking, what could be of most use and most help. And then, forming like little task groups to mobilize around that. But listening is a really important skill right now.
And just briefly and quickly, I think added to that, the challenge is that with boards and leadership of not-for-profits, quite often their toilet roll is suddenly deciding to disinvest. And they see everything as financial, everything as business, and they go, right, let's stop everything immediately. And the first thing they want to stop is fundraising. So there's a lot of indecisiveness, but unfortunately where there is decisiveness, quite often to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I just want to point out there that some of the things I'm noticing is the difference between doing things and doing things very well with insight. So the difference between a leader saying we're going to do a survey versus really doing a survey and taking the time to listen to their staff members, or have one-on-ones, or have group discussions that are facilitated and with structure and intent behind the questions. And the same as what you're saying, Gav, the difference between people saying we're just going to stop fundraising, or we're going to do an emergency appeal but we're going to send it just to everyone, versus people saying, where are my donors? Where are they at? We're going to do an empathy mapping exercise. We're going to start at a good place, and we're going to make these decisions with insight. on the back of this, like we're hearing a lot of challenges coming through leadership, but we're also hearing some amazing stories. Like Anne-Marie, I agree, that's incredible leadership coming through and really having the well-being. And someone else commented on Are You OK Australia, really promoting a focus on people that aren't in HR or supportive roles being able to understand and support people. What other examples, Fee, are out there at the moment with the people you're working with and others of people doing this really well?
For me, it's people who are focusing on protecting their base. So actually going back to who supports us, and are we putting our best effort into that base? It's the 80-20 rule again. A lot of our, where does the bulk of your support come from? And if you've lost some of those bigger funders like trusts and foundations, people are seeing some losses in their major gift end. Move down. Who is your base and how are you protecting them? Are you actually thinking about who are our supporters? Not everyone. Every email address doesn't equal a supporter. So the ones that are really focusing in on that and turning to doing the things that we talk about doing in fundraising all the time that always fall off at the end because they're not specifically seen as revenue generating. So the donor love type things. So I've got organisations who are sitting there now just calling from the top down, doing wellbeing calls, checking in with their donors, getting a temperature check, but letting them know how important they are and how much they are interested in their wellbeing in this crisis, and just being real people to them. So people are having success with emergency campaigns, but some are not in a position to be running those necessarily, and that focus back on, again, people, just comes back to people again.
And what about on that kind of point, sorry Gab, just before you add on there, I'm just watching the kind of chat responses, and Anne-Marie shared 2 points that went to exactly what you just said about the base and people that love you, but also the third one being invest for growth. Can you comment on, the organizations you've seen that have been doing that sustainability piece and like future scoping piece?
Yeah, and so it's the people who are not throwing your plans out the window, so adjusting. So there were some plans in place that may not be possible right now, but the ones that were there around growth that are still viable, still pursuing those. So some organisations have thrown them out of the window. They've gone into full kind of, we just must survive. And I think, that thrive, not survive quote you made, Anne-Marie, is really great there in the chat box, because that is the point, this is about thriving through this. All of our services are needed. So how can we thrive through this situation? So looking beyond what's happening, and others actually looking at the opportunity. So where's the opportunity in this? And that's not about being ambulance chasers. It's about actually saying things have changed, and in change, there is always opportunity. And there are organisations who are jumping on that, and that might be just flexing what they're currently doing more. So one of the organisations I work with in Australia has seen there's more eyeballs on TV. They had a DRTV program running. They've invested more in that, and they're getting a great return. And others are just freaked out by the idea that someone's doing acquisition in the middle of a pandemic. But they're needed. They're needed what they do. People want to feel good about themselves and they want to help. And they're having such a great return from investing more in TV, which others have gone, oh, too. So there are great examples of that, be brave.
Yeah, and I think that back to that point, Fee, I mean, just ringing and talking to all your donors, making them feel special, but also finding out, I mean, so many organisations I work with go, well, we don't really know why people support us.
Yeah.
So ask them and make a note of what they say. I mean, in effect, you can be doing market research and donor care at the same time. If you just ring absolutely everybody who supports you and your key donors straight from the top downwards in value, make sure you have a conversation with everybody and just ask the simple question: what is it you love about our work? Why do you support us? Why have you supported us for all these years? You'll get great information, and you can build that into a much better picture and a much better understanding of how they relate to you.
Yeah.
I think, just quickly on the organizational change thing, I think that we have to accept there are some organizations who are dealing with an existential crisis in the sense of they may not exist through this. And I think a lot of what I'm seeing is with organisations, particularly who are delivering straight into welfare at this moment in time, in an environment like Australia, where there's a digital community like us who are aware of these things and how to talk online, etc. That's fantastic. But their clients don't. The people they work with are the other side of the digital divide. And they've got to suddenly translate every single way they work into a new setting. And that really is a huge challenge. And so the focus shifts off things like fundraising, which at that point they see as not important, and they completely focus on the how are we going to survive as an organization.
Yeah.
Definitely. One more question.
Anne-Marie, we got to get you talking. Plan giving, you're absolutely right. So the incidence of will writing has gone through the roof around the world. And in some countries, it's harder for people to get these witnessed at the moment. But, lawyers are working out how to work remotely as well. It really has. The number of bequest inquiries, just even in New Zealand and Australia, has gone up. I know it's gone up in the UK. And not in US as well, I imagine. So, that plan giving messaging, again, some organisations hadn't been working on that. It was a longer term thing. That is an opportunity for growth right now, people looking into that. And Gav, on your point, talking to donors, I mean, I've got a bunch of charities at the moment who are just making wellbeing calls, or even calls to people who are monthly givers writing into cancel, to offer them opportunities to kind of stay on board. The feedback they're getting is amazing, the insight they're getting, but also it's buoying the spirits of the staff. The teams who are out there still working, doing services and programs, sharing that feedback from donors is really helping them. Also, people working from home, getting people to make a few calls a day or a couple in a week, everyone, it makes you feel less isolated. And hearing how thankful and grateful and engaged donors are is incredible. They're actually helping moving people forward. So once people get over the fear of, if I talk to them, they might cancel, which is completely unfounded, donors are actually playing a big role in, I think, moving and helping us stay on point.
Completely. Yeah. And if you feel comfortable, Nicole, can I just get you to share with the group what you just put in the chat box? I just think it is so vital right now in terms of what we're sharing. So like, why are organizations potentially not doing some of this stuff?
Do you want me to just read out or elaborate on what I typed? I think awesome. Yeah. It's the old, you don't know what you don't know, and you keep sort of following the patterns that you're following, and what businesses, NGOs, globally, small businesses and larger corporates follow the same patterns, and they don't work on the business necessarily. They're just working in the business and just following, the wheel, rather than taking a moment to pause, test and measure, see what's working, see what's not working, and actually monitor what they're doing, and outsourcing that if they don't have the people and the skills within the organisation to do that. But it's actually getting that message out to people, to organisations, to realise that needs to be looked at. That's what's lacking.
100%, and thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to ask one more question, and Kyla, I'm going to direct this one to you. In that scope of organisations potentially not knowing what else they maybe should be doing, or how their donors are feeling, or what else is out there, what have you found is a great way for them to figure that out? DSIL and Starling and other collaborative agencies always start with a question and listening. What else have you found? Like, what are the ways that people can uncover these things and commit to that?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned liberating structures as at the very beginning and up front. And I think what I've been finding in more and more of the work that I've been doing is that using tools, much like the ones we've experienced today, the MAD-T and the Spiral Journal, are just ways to get a lot of people within the organization to share their ideas. And in some organizations, they're simply just not used to doing that. They're not used to being asked. Anyone kind of below leadership is not really solicited for ideas or opinions. And I think what we know to be true is that brilliant ideas can come from anywhere. And so what tools like liberating structures do is they allow the opportunity to unleash ideas from across the organization. And actually, we've got just a wealth of fantastic knowledge within our organizations. We just need to learn how to tap that. So, I think as leaders, taking a deeper dive into how things like liberating structures can help you might be one really great tool to get everybody on board in the organization.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think leaders that are saying right now, or we only need this team to make these decisions, or I don't want to run a collaboration session because we're not getting much out of it. That's an excuse. And very much so, your collaboration will be successful if you structure it in these designed ways. And to Anne-Marie, you had a question at the start in terms of a session like this, you know, how many people does it take to run that? When you're very well practiced, you can run it alone if you need to, but you need to tell people in the room that you'll take a little bit of time to do the technical back end. Usually we'd run it with 2 people. If you're running a group of, let's say 100, I've run sessions of up to 500-600, you'd want to have a few different facilitators so you can handle the amount of questions coming through. But usually 2 is a kind of good starting point. Someone for technical, so you would have seen that Gav in this session has played the role of popping all the questions in the box, answering any questions that come up, pointing out to me if someone's on, you know, phone only or video only and not getting into the right breakout rooms, and that kind of thing as it comes through. Thank you so much for those questions and for all the responses in leadership. I'm just going to wrap up with some of the final slides and then go back to a space. Thanks so much. If you need to get off now, no worries at all. We're going to have the recording of this, so I'm just going to go through the final few slides to wrap up. So on the back of kind of the slides that we were just talking through then, for us as collaborators, so for Fee, Gav, you know, Kyla and myself, we're grappling with not only how can we support organisations, but how can we collaborate across organisations, across the sector, with corporates, with social enterprises on some of the bigger questions that are coming up right now. You know, how can we use human-centered design to be designing these decisions with our donors, not for them, with our communities of support, you know, the beneficiaries that we're working alongside? How can we bring together cancelled events and collaborate with, you know, 15 different cancer charities on walks that are all everyone seems to be planning their face-to-face events in October. I don't know what it is, but everyone said we're cancelled till October. So I don't know about you, but October's going to be...
Stoptober.
Yeah, exactly. October's going to be a run every second minute. Yeah, how can we collaborate in that space? So those are the big questions we're grappling with, and we really want to work with organisations that are prepared to dive in for those. So where next? Obviously, everyone is making big decisions at the moment, and I'm just really, really amazed by the responses in the chat box, or not amazed, but very motivated by the responses in the chat box. If your organisations do need support, there's a few things that we have available as consultants. The first one is my company, Starling, has just launched a 6-week leadership program, which is focused on a lot of the work that the 4 of us do in kind of facilitated innovation, collaboration and connection in this virtual world. The 4 of us all have a lot of experience in working remotely, virtually, with different types of organisations, and also with liberating structures, which Kyla and I have trained with at DSAL. And that are really easy ways to dive into this without having to worry about being an advanced facilitator. They're really, really great skills to have. We'll send you these slides, but there's a discount code to join that program for anyone in the kind of Resource Alliance IFC family and their networks. Fee, Gavin, Kyla, do you want to just make a quick note on the kind of consulting or support that you're providing organisations at the moment? And I will just say that kind of under Starling, we are collectively consulting to different organisations. So each of us have different specialties. So if you know that you have multiple things going on for your organisations or network of organisations, please do reach out, because we're very passionate about kind of collaborative consulting right now. Over to you guys.
I'll go first. Yeah, so at the moment, my focus at the moment is on coaching and strategic support. So I'm coaching a couple of board members, some CEOs and fundraising bosses. Usually at the higher level, it's helping them to navigate fundraising, particularly in this period, if that's not their expertise or area. And with the fundraisers, it is more about strategy and how we get their teams through and onto the other side of this situation currently at the moment. And my specialty area is individual giving. So that's where a big focus for me is around people's individual giving programs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or Kyla, yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to share that I'm working with typically non-profit organizations who are looking to support kind of resource mobilization, but also leadership coaching, etc., within their organizations, so they can expand their thinking and maybe move from the traditional old power structure to new power structure thinking, including things like agile and liberating structures. And also, you know, very recently, this whole movement into the virtual world, we just did something locally, Kaz, where, of course, one of the local organizations here, a food shelter program for kids, just had to cancel their gala. So we quickly put together an online virtual gala, and we literally raised as much money as we normally would, $500,000 through the virtual one. So I think there's going to be a huge shift towards that, and managing and mobilizing virtual events too. And I think that's an exciting space.
Can everyone on the call quickly unmute yourselves and just have a quick celebration for that organization? Kyla, that is incredible. Like, awesome.
Yay.
I don't think we're celebrating enough at the moment, and that is incredible, to take a gala virtually and still raise as many funds. Like, congrats. That's awesome and wonderful for the cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, you're right, Carla. Finished?
All good.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm seeming to work in 3 different ways. One is actually a lot of this, working with teams, trying to help them work out how to work online and continue to exist, survive, and thrive, and also care for themselves, and leaders as well within that. The second level is doing what I do all the time, which is really looking at insights, talking to donors, understanding how they're feeling at this moment in time, and how they want to support those organizations at this moment in time. And the third is we're trying to collaborate around innovation in the sector generally and push some organizations into a new space. And very similar situation, Kyla here, a great organization that supports kids with out of school care. And at the moment, they're completely incapable of delivering their services because, going back to that point, all the parents are not online. So they don't have that relationship they used to have. So how can we help them transform their offer in this sort of moment of time and maintain their sustainability? But the great thing about that organization, reflecting back on what we've talked about a lot, is the leader, the CEO there, is very inclusive. And he is also thinking about where they want to be in 6 months' time. So actually he's pushing forward with all his brand reinvention work, because actually he can do that right now. Even though he's in a crisis, he's actually saying, let's get on with the brand reinvention so that in 6 months' time, we come back as a new organization in a way. So I think that's a good example of leadership in the way that we've been talking about as well.
Big time, 100%. Quickly, for everyone on the call, when we send you the notes, we've also put a bunch of stuff on tools, on virtual tools. I'm a massive geek with my virtual tools about how to use them and when. So there's a bunch of notes on there, and also some kind of quick videos to go through that you can explore. In that Digital Village program, we've got a much more kind of information about how you can use those tools, how you can keep it simple with your teams. And then I know that everyone kind of on this call, you know, Kyla, Fee and Gav have some great experience with how you can keep that really simple. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. It's been a really, really amazing discussion. I really, really appreciate your time. Ruby, thank you to yourself and the wider Resource Alliance team for really leading these Plan C discussions. We really, really appreciate it. Would you like to say anything before we wrap up and stop the recording?
Just a huge thank you to you guys and to everyone who took part. I don't know about everyone else, but I feel, okay, it's nearly midnight here, but I feel ready to start my day tomorrow. Feeling really positive, and it's so lovely to have everyone working together, and let's just keep doing it more. And thank you guys for leading this session. It's been really brilliant.
Thank you so much, and everyone on the call that it was contributing. Those that are still on, Max, Annemie, Sebastian, Judith, so many names. Thank you so much for joining and contributing. And yeah, from all of us, please reach out. We love to collaborate together and support organisations right now. And really, cost is not going to be an issue. We're creating lots of different collaborations between organisations to give them access to the support that they need. Oh my gosh, Mike, Kenya, love it. Great representation.
Mike wins.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to wrap that up. Thank you so much. This has been Plan C discussions with awesome people. Have a great day, guys, and have a good sleep to those in the other hemisphere. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.